Welcome back. Outside Minds podcast. Because you've already seen too much, bro.
They only added it so it could be like a ritual.
They're saying there's these, the end of times, right? There's all these signs.
Do you think we would know? Like, do you think the general public would know this game?
Take a picture for $5. You have a purpose in life, and if you don't fulfill it, you will come back until you fulfill it.
Welcome back to the Outside Minds podcast. I'm your host and creator, Stilo Free. This is the other host and creator,
Out420.
and we got an amazing special guest in the house today. We are doing a swapcast with Rayleane Hope Martinez from My Advice to You. Go ahead and let our listeners know a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Sure. So I am the host of My Advice to You. It is fairly new. I started last year around November. I am also a teacher. I'll keep the high school on private for now, but it's been a great time, and that's pretty new to me too. Going on a year for that.
Nice. Heck yeah. So I selected the topic for today. The topic for today is synchronicities. There's a lot of synchronicities in the way we met too, and the work we've done together. We used to work together, and then when we worked together, we actually figured out that my brother was the coach to your cheer team in high school, and then we actually ended up being in a music video together. She was my co-star in one of my music videos. Fun fact.
And that's where I met her.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So I like to say that synchronicities are kind of like the roadmap to your spiritual journey. When you pay attention to the signs, you're kind of guided in discovering the real you, I guess I should say. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the connections we make with people is really fun. I feel like I always tell people you never know who you're going to meet, and it's such a small world. And
Definitely.
shout out to Wilmington because that's where we were working.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
But that happened. And then, his brother used to be my cheer coach, which for many years. So I had knew his brother for a long time. One of my role models growing up for cheer because he was just awesome, sociable, awesome guy. But yeah, and especially when it comes to connecting with different people, you meet people on different paths of your timeline, your specific timeline, and I think when we first met, I was on one path. Now here I am in a whole separate, but a lot of growth since then.
Which is funny to say because we like to think of them as different paths, but to bring it back to synchronicities, we worked in the service industry together. You did cheer. You were also doing some media in something that you called, I think, Peace Art, right? Where you're doing interviews of local musicians and stuff like that. Do you feel like those kind of things led you into the place that you are now in order to be the great podcaster that you are?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was always into something where the schedule looks a little bit different. And so when I was doing the media work with my friend Tony, shout out to Tony, Peace Art was somewhere we could have good talks, right? A lot of talks about life, but more so that whole message we were sending to people when we were doing our podcast, Peace Art, was to be inspired by yourself every day and make the art that you feel deep in your soul that you need to be doing.
Oh, so that was a podcast format.
Yes,
okay,
it was
cool.
We had a little mix. So it was a podcast. We would throw live shows where we would have artists come.
That's right.
Who did music. And then we had, small business owners come through and show off their art, whether it was, selling food, it was selling shirts, clothing, jewelry. It was
dope
pretty much
networking.
Yeah, bringing that community together for art and doing what you want, doing your art.
Make sure you speak into the mic a little bit more.
My bad.
No, it's all good. Like you said, you mentioned we grew up in the Wilmington area. Do you feel like you have to set an example to the youth that is growing up now in the community in which we grew up in order to kind of make it a better place for the youth to surround themselves in?
Absolutely. So I feel like I easily get along with my kids and I am able to build relationships with the kids because of where I grew up, because my community is very much like theirs, very small, but there's so much that goes on in between the communities. And that's being pretty vague, but just growing up in a city like ours, I mean, we're in the middle of refineries, so not everything is always good with health, but maintaining that bond too, though, with those who you grow up with, because you make those long-lasting friendships, like how I was mentioning,
exactly.
we met each other.
Exactly. Yeah, me and Todd, we went to high school together, but we didn't even meet until we ended up partying with the same people together.
Yeah, like 10th, 11th
So
grade.
I feel like I think community is strong in the place that we grew up in, and I think we're lucky to have that with each other because we're able to build things like this where he's just a videographer and I'm just an audio engineer, and when we put it together, we're just like, we're not getting paid from this ourselves, but we love it so much, and the fact that we can do it ourselves it's really just
we're doing it for ourselves. It's fun.
It's a product of community.
Yeah, we found a likeness in it, and since we were friends, it just worked out really good.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about like the community in Wilmington?
Sure. So Wilmington wasn't always known for the best of things, you know what I mean? But I have to shout out my dad because he put me in sports growing up. And so, the little mini pilots, before you get to Banning, you started there with Pop Warner.
Yeah, there you go.
Shout out to the Pop Warner League.
Midget cheerleaders.
Yep. Yes.
I used to play midget, junior, midget, pee-wee. I was on the pilots.
Yeah, I used to be so excited to make it to the midget team, seeing all the older ones, but it was such a good time. So I feel like Wilmington's a community where you need to stay busy in order to not fall into the traps, right? Because we want to see amazing change within Wilmington, and I think a lot of the people I grew up with are making that happen.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
Because we were in a town where it was just kind of like a small thing to do, and it was barely being able to make it out of high school. That was a challenge in itself, and so things have changed a lot since then. I think we're seeing a lot of progress. But growing up, we had to deal with a little bit more than,
I think the schools are even like nicer from even just the physical look of them.
I mean, Wilmington has always been great because like I said, it's always community based, and it's great that you have people like you that give back. I was going to ask you if you feel like teaching was a full circle moment, because even with like my stepdad was like the president of the Booster Club for a while. He was the coach of the football team. He played football at Banning. So I feel like a lot of the people, even though they feel like Wilmington might be a little rough around the edges, the people who have grown up and been, built their character through this community always feel like it's good to give back, and I feel like that's a good thing that I see in the community for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of artists now, some that do music, and it's awesome to hear their voice. And I'm just like, hey, I went to school with this person, and they're doing it now. Yeah. They're singing, they're rapping, like doing their whole thing. And like I said, and how you've said it, I think you said it perfectly. Like the community built the character, right? Growing up in these places, it gives people that passion to, be a role model within the community and let others show, like, no matter where you come from, if you want to make it happen for yourself and you have an art that needs to be listened to, heard of, I think you need to do it.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I agree.
So obviously, you're a leader in the community, you are a teacher, you are a podcaster, you present yourself out there in the media, so you have to hold up like an image. So I felt like, when I was rapping and putting my music out there, and I started to have a little brother and sister, and they started, grow up and listen to my music and start to know what's going on, I felt like I kind of had to, not change my image, but make sure I present my image in a way to which I feel like I am being a good role model for the youth. Did you feel like you had a bigger responsibility to do that once you became a teacher?
Oh, that's a great question. I think absolutely, just because I felt like, whoa, I'm a teacher now, I'm molding these minds. And I remember, having great teachers when I was younger was a big deal for me. And I know I've already mentioned my dad, but he was one of the first big teachers for me too. And just because he taught me, one way of life, right, which is just to kind of be, a good person. And he showed me by demonstrating that, taking care of me and my brother, but also in the educational setting too. It's a different kind of learning, I think. And so when you have good teachers, they encourage you to be your best, but not only in that, but it's also to help continue growing, right? Because you're learning different academics as you go. Yeah. And then to be able to teach what you've learned, right, from philosophy or anything that you learn in school, right? it keeps you wanting to question the world a little bit more. I think for me, I had a teacher when I was a sophomore at Banning.
Shout him out. Shout him out. Let's hear it.
Mr. Scanlon.
Yes. Mr. Shout out.
He was super cool for me. And I only had him for like a year. But he said one thing to us that it was based on Socrates, which is to question everything. And so he always would say, you know, like, question everything when it comes to the government, question everything that you're learning in school. He was like, question me right now, because why should you learn from me, or why should you just go by the books, right? It's just the thought of being open-minded, you know, and that was such a big thing for me. So ever since then, I was just like, okay, talking about synchronicities, right? When I got to college, I was kind of in a mix because I was just like, I don't know what I want to study. That kind of commitment for 4 years is a little much right now. I'm only like 18, you know? And so I ended up in a communications class, and I remember Socrates coming up again, and I was like, that was just one of those sparks yet again, because I hadn't had that in so long, you know? But then that whole message of just being the one to question everything, right? Because sometimes, especially when it comes to schooling, you know, before I went to community college and made that decision, I was supposed to go to a private. And that would have put me in debt for like $100,000. And within a little bit of time, you know what I mean? So I was just like, here I am. The book says like, oh yeah, you know, it's a university, like you should just go there straight after high school. And I was just like, how about not? You know, how about
you'll
no?
be one of the people that are circulating on the reels right now, complaining about their student loan debt and how they're not getting forgiveness anymore, you know, because they wanted to party instead of paying their debt when, you know. But it's kind of a good decision not to go if you're not 100% sure what you're going to do, because you will just get in debt for no reason and get a useless degree, which most people have.
A lot of people we know in different industries too, you can ask them like, oh, you have a degree, that's awesome. What is the degree in? And it's something completely different. You know, the place where they work or their careers, but it's a good thing, I think, just because, hey, you got your degree. But in the sense, it's just kind of like wherever you were meant to be will be.
It shows you how flawed the education system is. But with that being said, on the other side of it, it does show you why it's important to have teachers that care. You know what I mean? So, like you said, you had the teacher that cared, that said question everything. And especially in a school like Banning, you can tell that he cared, because it's like you have a school that's known for having, you know, rebellious students, you know. So to have a teacher that's like, question everything, even question me, you know what I mean? It makes you know that there's someone that cares enough to let the kids know that there's actually something different than the main narrative.
There's something more.
Exactly. How important is it to for the job as a teacher to be someone that cares for the students and will go the extra mile for them?
Oh, this I think has been my favorite question so far. So I definitely feel like that makes a hell of a difference when you are a teacher, is to care. And I think when you teach or choose to teach, like we were mentioning earlier, you're molding minds, right? At some point, you're either going to drive somebody to education or drive them away. Like that's how powerful the position is, you know? And if you have a passion for teaching and the kids know that you are there to really help them at the end of the day, you're there to teach them things they didn't know before, teach them things you can utilize in the classroom, but also outside, right? Like my subject is English. And constantly I'm like, let's find those connections so that they know why they should be learning in the first place, you know? And with our youth now, I try to encourage them to just be more than I don't know, just the things that people normally go for, right? Like pick a career that you really are going to love, right? And not just choose something for money. I think choosing, you know, your art or your craft, whatever you want to do in your career, should be something that you have a passion for. And so going back to your question, and going back to our topic today, synchronicities, right? I didn't always set out to be a teacher, but there were connections that I was making along the way of my path. And then finding, you know, oh, I like doing this more. Oh, I actually really like doing this, or I hate doing this, you know. But one of the fields was always education. And then when I would ask myself, like, what is it that I like the most? And it's the connecting with other educators who have the spark for, you know, helping and it doesn't matter if it's just one student, you know, making their life a little bit different, right? Giving them something to look forward to. Also, I love helping students find their joy and their passion, whether that's,
absolutely.
you know, in their art
Yeah.
or if it's in school, you know, whatever their dreams are. I'm like, let's keep watering those, right? You guys are planting seeds right now. That's what I like to tell them. And I'm just like, water your seeds, you know, go after with whatever it is that you love.
Yeah, in 2008, I worked for LAUSD, like fresh out of high school. But I was
Child of God.
I was a substitute teacher's assistant for pre-K, so ages 2 to 5. Yeah, so but I grew up as the older sibling of 4 younger siblings, so. It was good because, you know, those kids in the school were at the age where they were potty trained, so you didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But there's still those little bad kids, you know? But I was that kid, you know? So it was different for me to be the teacher because they felt more comfortable doing things, but I could also tell them and they would listen to me because, you know, they'd kind of relate to me
It's
more.
on a different level.
Yeah, it's on a different level. I wouldn't scold them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I know that it might be difficult because you can't connect with every student, right? No. And looking back, there's a few teachers I had, and you know, it happened with coaches too, where it's like you're just like, oh man, I hate Coach so and so or Mrs. so and so, I hate them. But looking back, you're like, damn, like they pressed me so hard because they saw the potential within me. You know what I mean? Do you have any students like that are kind of like go against the grain a little bit, but you kind of still
You see a spark or something.
in them?
Absolutely. And it's funny because, you know, certain teachers will talk about the same relationships they have with their students, and sometimes they're a little bit more challenging than others, is the way that I'll put it. And there are times where you'll have what we call a bad day with a student, where it's just like you're not seeing eye to eye on something, or maybe the messaging you're trying to give to teach something isn't coming out right. You find that a lot in education, right? And like you said, you're not going to let, or you're not going to be able to have every student love you or like you, right? Sometimes you're just not going to get along.
It's just like the real life.
Exactly. Real life stuff, right?
Yeah.
And even if that's the case, you know, sometimes it'll start off one way, but showing them that you do care and letting them know, you know, like, hey, man, I'm just here to do a job too.
It's not me versus you. We're on the same team.
We're on the same
team. I was you once.
Exactly. That's what also makes it a lot easier for me too, though, because I'm just like, look, I may understand a little bit to what you're feeling, however it may be. You know, I can see we may not be getting along, but I'm here to teach you something. And as long as you walk out of this classroom feeling like I did my job right and you feel good about whatever it is that I taught, we're good. We don't gotta make it. We don't have to make it complicated.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. LAUSD is an interesting school district because back to the point before about community, like they have it's a strong sense of community. You know what I mean? Going to school every day, making pals and making friends, and really becoming a part of society. But I think LAUSD also has like a lot of weaknesses. You know what I mean? Like they don't really pay a lot of attention to the things that need attention, and they don't really
that goes to politics.
And they don't really
funding.
Do the teaching styles that kids need nowadays. And I think the big part of it is, you know, the ADHD thing, you know, where our generation, they kind of tried to, you know, diagnose us and medicate us, but we started to realize that once these kids that have focus issues on certain things figure out something that they're really interested in, then they're hyper focused. You know what I mean? That's me with music. That's Todd with video editing. How often do you see that with the kids where they have something, they're not interested in it, and then when they have something they are interested, it's just hyper focused.
That's all they do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We see that a lot with our kids. Sometimes they're really into just like drawing. Now we have a lot that are really into gaming.
Gaming is huge. That's always been a big thing.
Yeah, and so, you know, we'll kind of work with them, and they have a lot of clubs now. I think because we have educators who are doing pretty good with trying to get the students to do something outside of class and give them something for after school. I know mine offers a lot of after school programs, which I love because they don't have to, you know, go somewhere else while the parents are still at work, right?
Yep.
They can stay on school campus, they're safe, they're working on what they like or what they love, right? And they can fix their complete attention onto it. And I think it depends on the environment for the school you work for, right? Choose a real good one where you can bond with your coworkers, because I know for me, I feel blessed because me and the coworkers, we get along really well.
Yeah, that's very important because that could alter someone's mood. You know, some people can't control what happens, and they'll bleed it into the classroom or bleed it into anywhere they go. So it's a big factor.
It is. And it does get stressful, because I see teachers that I look up to where they're teaching a sport after school, or they're hosting clubs for the kids, like robotics, right? And so there's a lot of time for certain teachers where they're there from 6 a.m. all the way until 6 p.m.
Still have to grade papers.
And still have to grade after all of that.
Yeah.
That shit's intense sometimes.
Yeah.
But like we were mentioning earlier, have the passion for it, right? Because you're spreading on the passion to the kids. And when they see you very involved in your work.
Shout out Coach Theron.
Hey, there you go.
And shout out Mr. Behrens. Those are just two off the top of my head.
There you go.
You got any teachers you want to shout out?
No, off the top.
No teachers.
Not off the top. I mean, we can go back to 4th grade, Mr. Isaac. That was one of the best teachers, and he taught most of my siblings too after me. Yeah. So he actually had a big impact on life for sure.
Shout out LAUSD, man. LAUSD brings out the character in these kids that, might grow up in, rougher neighborhoods or whatever.
Was the movie 187 LAUSD with Samuel L?
I think it was, actually. Right? Have you seen 187?
I think I have.
Hey, if you guys haven't seen that movie, that's
a
cult classic of one of those old school like gangster movies.
Yeah.
It's a cult classic. Yeah. Chop his finger off.
Are You Done?
Yeah.
Are You Done?
One of
Samuel
my
L. Jackson's in it?
Samuel L.
It's
Jackson.
one of my favorite old school gangster movies. Like LA gangster.
Yeah,
It's
a LA movie.
Gangster.
But yeah, shout out LAUSD, man. The black and yellow lunch tickets, yellow and
Who
dark
was on
blue.
the meal program?
Navy blue
and yellow.
Yeah,
if
man.
you got the breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, and then when you forgot your lunch ticket or you lost it, at least for when I was at Del Amo Elementary, you still got lunch, but you just had to go all the way to the end of the line.
Yeah,
you get a little temporary lunch ticket.
Oh, you can get a temporary one. Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
All the good pizza was out.
Yeah, you had to go with the nasty chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what days?
Those are the good days,
Yeah.
You somehow found someone who didn't want their lunch tickets and you had 2 lunches.
Hey, they gave you the lunch menu for the whole year.
Oh, yeah.
You know exactly what you were getting on May 31st, and it was fucking November the year before.
Well, when they had the real food, I was just getting pizza every day. I already knew what I was getting. La Pizza Loca. Every day. Greasiest pizza.
Oh, that's funny.
LAUSD memories. So, being a teacher, you see the effect of... you see the youth, you see what's going on with the kids today. Can you let us know what the effect of social media and music is on the kids? Because when we were growing up, at least me and Todd, you're a tad bit younger than us, but we kind of grew up and saw how it was to not really have a computer or a device in every household. And then now that's the norm, you know what I'm saying? You see even 3-4-year-olds are like iPad kids, you know what I'm saying? Like,
nobody in middle school had a phone back in the day, but now everybody in middle school has a phone, which is crazy.
Elementary school kids too.
For sure.
Do you notice, with that being said, the influence that social media and music has on the children now?
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually funny that you ask, because LAUSD just implemented a new policy where you have to have your phones in a little pouch. like the phones have to be taken away.
Like one of those Yonder bags when you go to a comedy club.
Yes.
And where they lock it up.
Shout out to the Yonder bags.
Shout out to the Yonder pouches.
Shout out Yonder bags.
That's actually what my school has.
Shout out Yonder.
Shout out to the Yonder pouches. You're doing it for the kids right now. So it's hilarious to me. It's funny because the kids, when they don't have their phones, they are what they say, we're locked in. And when they have their phones on them, they're constantly going to be scrolling through, right? They're going to be on social media, like you said, right? And so I think that they need a lot more help, especially because of COVID too. I think COVID definitely took a toll. That and social media, they go hand in hand, especially because during that time, social media was their one way to interact, right? We had important years during high school. Yeah. Some of them missed out on that, right? That's going from...
Some of them didn't graduate, right? They didn't get to walk the stage.
The walking the stage was a huge one.
They graduated, but they didn't walk the stage. Yeah.
And it's taking away from that.
Let's go.
I
Yeah, me
graduated
too.
but didn't walk the stage.
Oh, I
You know what
did.
I'm saying?
I
So
walked
know
the
what it's
stage.
like.
My bad.
But
Me too.
I made it, Mama. I made it.
with that being said, you know, you're a high school teacher, and this is the age where kids are trying to figure themselves out. Some of them find their identity through, you know, being a football player, being, you know, one of the captains on, you know, a sports team, or being a cheerleader, or being, you know, in a band, or part of like a certain group or whatever. And I'm finding that social media getting thrown into the mix is something that's definitely a new part of that identity, because it's a way that they present themselves to each other in a context of, you know, a digital persona as opposed to doing something face to face. Can you speak on how that is such an intertwined part of the culture nowadays?
Yeah, so I think it takes a toll in the sense that we have more shy, you know, people, or we have shy students with shyer personalities. And I think that's because they do a lot of, you know, on the phone, social media type of vibe. And so getting them to present things is always fun. Trying to get them comfortable with like, hey, you know what? You have so much personality with you, like what you say you do on social media. Show it in the classroom. It's the same thing. However, I do like the fact that sometimes for assignments, you can have them do like a little mini podcast. You can tell them to utilize those tools because they're going to want to do something on it anyway. Like we even would say you can make a TikTok video or like the outline of a social media post, you know? And so those do help with their way of learning because they're very used to access when it comes to being fast, right? So they're used to having things at the tip of their hands, tips of their fingers. They have a question. Go ahead and Google it. ChatGPT is another one, you know. It's just part of what they're used to, then it affects the way that they learn, right? And they need to constantly keep busy. So it's just affected it in the whole, like as you teach your class, right? And then just making those connections for them too, so they're interested in what they're doing, because social media is very prevalent. You're not going to see a day without it now going forward.
I mean, I think they should go ahead and implement a class and let people know, you know, the mental health side of it. You know what I mean? Because especially like as an artist, you know what I mean? Like as ambitious as I was and trying to put music out and getting bummed out when I didn't get X amount of likes, or trying to get this amount of likes, or looking at someone else and seeing that this band has this many followers and my band doesn't have that many followers, it really takes a toll on yourself. And like I said, it's become ingrained so much in personal self-identity that when you don't hit those goals or you don't reach those, I kind of had to reevaluate and kind of, you know, let myself know that, hey, like it's fun to have this as part of your whole thing, but make sure that, you know, this doesn't really define you.
It's not
you know
not your
I mean?
main focus.
The main thing
those
that
numbers
feels,
don't really matter.
The main thing that matters is how you feel about you. And when you put your persona, or you put so much importance on having followers or having a big following on social media, I feel like it's a little bit of a danger to that, because especially to kids in that age group that are still trying to find self-identity. So I propose that maybe we should have a social media class in school to, you know, let kids know the mental health side of it and everything, and how to navigate that in that period of life where they're trying to find self-identity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, especially when they're so young, right? Because they're already going through a bit of a change, right? When it comes to getting to know themselves and who they're going to be and what they're turning into, right? And so they have another factor in that stage, right, of maturity. That's, I guess, one thing too that society social media is doing right now, right, is the whole various ages on what you see, right, can sometimes make a person's mind mature a whole lot faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
we had to go find magazines in the woods in my days. We didn't have a cell phone.
yeah, so you see that take a toll in identity too.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, I think in this day and age, it's hard to be a teacher. It's hard to be a podcaster, and it's hard to even, you know, sometimes it's hard to be
consistent.
a part of society. It's hard to be consistent. How do you stay motivated?
Oh, that's a good question. So I feel like I do a lot of self-help work and making sure the mental is good, because I feel like as long as a teacher's mind is doing good, you defeat that burnout, which I think is the most biggest challenge for teachers, because you're constantly in the classroom and you have more than like 100 students, you know, that you see all the time. And so you have to keep that passion, right? And it's not easy. It does become challenging sometimes, especially because we're all humans too.
Yeah, it is a job at the end of the day.
It is. And you got to learn how to take breaks, especially when your mind is going.
Yeah, well, I brought that up the other day. I was like, relax, give yourself a break. You know, give yourself a break sometime.
That mental break is so real. And I think once you do that, you're able to refresh, you know. And it's funny too, because like I was mentioning earlier, you'll have challenging days with certain students, you know. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you'll have the best of days and you're just on one and you're laughing all for the majority of a day, right? But then sometimes there's days like when you come back from a long break, right? Kids are kind of checked out. Or right before a break actually is when it's even worse, because they know.
That's like me at work. Like they're like, oh, can you go do this? I clocked out on my head 20 minutes ago, bro. Like, I already left work in my head, man. I'm gone, you know?
Yes, they are no longer, as they would say, locked in. They are checked out. Like, but yeah, I think just as long as you're taking those breaks like we'd mentioned, and, you know, keeping your mental as straight as possible, you know, to be ready to go. Keep that passion burning.
Yes. Well, I mean, you heard it from herself, Rayleane Hope Martinez from the My Advice to You podcast. This has been another Swapcast with the Outside Minds podcast, where conspiracy, spirituality, and psychedelics intersect. You know what it is. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we are going to have Rayleane go ahead and close us out, since this is a Swapcast.
Oh, well, thank you for joining in. This is all for today. Bye.
Peace out.